Hello, guys, and welcome to the fifth fifth episode of the Pinnacle X Therapy podcast with Doug. And today I have the most fantastic guest, guys. You won't believe this guy. 1993, old boy of Maritzburg College, and I can tell you right now that class can be very proud of him, and the school's very proud of him, and me as a fellow old boy, super proud of this young man. And yeah, he's gone through the ranks, guys. Studied at Tucky's. I'm not even sure whether at Marty's, but so involved in that Stellenbosch area, living in that Stellenbosch area. The current SA Sevens manager, and probably got a few other things like I've read in the I've followed up not just the sports scientists, but all the other backing around the sports when it comes to mental mentoring, all sorts of things involved, which we're going to get into today. But most importantly for me, a good human being, a great husband, and an awesome father. And Michelle and your two daughters, I'm correct, am I right? What are the daughters' names again? Because I did look them up. Was it Kirsten? Kristen and Nicola. That's right.
Kristen and Nicola.
And for your sins, you married a Waterkloof girl, so your Afrikaans now must be pretty sharp.
The best ever.
And guys, our guest today is Ashley Evert. And my friend Ash, it is an absolute privilege to have you on my little podcast. It's the fifth one, and hopefully there's going to be 500 to how many more of wonderful people like you and sharing true stories. As we're saying offline just now, we don't care about achievements and this and who you are and whatever. It's about who the person really is that counts on this podcast. So Ash, let's start off, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Doug. It's a fantastic honor to be on this call with you. When I opened up the Zoom and I was thinking, in 1989 when you were one of our prefects, and fortunately you didn't have a difficult name to spell. Arnesgaard was quite a tricky one to get under the belt. But you think about those historical experiences, and every single step that we go through in life, every single phase is just preparing us for where we're meant to be in the journey that we're on. And like you said, it's the most important thing is how do we use our sphere of influence to be able to impact others? Because at the end of the day, isn't that our ultimate purpose?
Absolutely. And I mean, just on that, I mean, how, as a manager of this sevens entity, I mean, it's a giant within the sevens circuit. South Africa is really making its name, especially winning the recent tournament. So congrats on that too. That was fantastic, especially in our own backyard. But over these years, is it 14 years you've been involved?
Our 13th year coming up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean 13 years. So now you've faced so many ups and downs. I mean, I even criticize, and I'm putting up my hand there. I said, geez, our guys are so small compared to the Fijians. How are we handling it? So how do you handle those ups and downs? How have you done that as a manager, mentor, mental coach? How have you done that?
That's a really cool question, because every single one of us go through these seasons in life where you feel as though you're in the desert, and you don't know where you're walking, and you don't even know when the end's going to come. And when I started with the sevens in October 2012, we were, I think it was 6 or 7 years, we came second in the world. We were consistently the second best team in the world, alternating with Fiji and New Zealand that were they were jostling for the first place. So they were either first or third, but we were consistently second. And it was a huge frustration for us, because we knew we had a good team. We knew we had a team that was capable of actually, winning the World Series, because that's the ultimate, on the seventh circuit. I know since the Olympics has come along, that's pivoted a bit. But again, that's a once-off tournament where, the bounce of a ball, luck can play a huge part in it. But when, the teams that are consistently successful throughout a season that, garner the most points and then are crowned as World Series champions, that's a true measure. You can look back and say, well, listen, we planned for this, we worked hard, and we can see the net result. So, it sounds terrible to think you be, for 7 years being the second best team in the world consistently. That was a huge frustration for us because we had bigger goals than that. So, sometimes frustrations can be when things are going well as well. Sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
the desert can be, when you're doing exceptionally well, in the world's eyes, the second best team on the planet, that says a lot. And then what happened is that we almost got our kick over in 2017. We were frustrated with 2016 because we honestly believe we had a team that could win an Olympic gold medal. That specific year, we had beaten Fiji more than what they'd beaten us in one-on-one heads. We had beaten New Zealand more often than what they'd beaten us in that specific season, World Series season. And going into Olympics, we had a great team. We had Kwagga Smith, we had Cheslin Colby, Francois Hougaard, Werner Kok, Carl Brown, Philip Snyman, Cecil Africa, Branko du Preez, legends of the sevens
those are
game.
legends, legends. Yeah.
Legends of the sevens game, and our bogey team was always England, and they played as GB in that Olympics, and we lost to them 7-5 in the semi-final, and I'll never forget watching Ben Ryan as soon as he saw we lost that game, how there was just absolute joy in his heart because he knew that we were probably the only team that would have been able to, prevent Fiji winning that gold medal. And unfortunately, that was a huge disappointment. It's quite an interesting thing, at the Olympics or when you're playing for medals, second place, you'll always see if they're on the podium, they're never smiling because they lost the gold medal. They didn't win a silver.
Yeah.
But when you get the bronze, you actually win the bronze. So you always see the team or the athlete that came first and the one that came third. They're the ones that got the biggest smiles, or not the one that comes second. And we re-looked at okay, well, what now? And then we lost a lot of those top players. But then the turning point came, and 2017. We went through the season, 10 tournaments. We played in 8 finals, won 5. So it was just an absolutely incredible season. But everything that we'd been working towards from October 2012 to that, let's call it June 2017, everything was working towards that specific point. And there were a lot of ups and downs. We learned so many lessons, because I think that's the key thing. You mentioned earlier about us being the smallest team on the circuit, which we still are. But we know what our strengths are. We know what we're good at. And then we've got to make sure that, where we can be exposed and where things won't work out for us, how do we work around that so that we make sure our strengths outweigh, opportunities for the opposition to be able to take us down. So there was a lot of talking, a lot of chat. Every single season, we'd start at the beginning and say, well, this is where we are. This is our cumulative journey from 2012. This is what last season looked like. These were our gains. This is where we can improve. So it was a constant environment where we were chatting with each other. We were talking and we were engaging. You got legends of the game that have got incredible experience, players that have played over 50 tournaments, over 60 tournaments, over 70 tournaments.
Yeah.
So their experience was invaluable, and their contribution with the maturity that they gained over time as adults to be able to, sit in a meeting and engage and, talk about what we've done well, what we can improve on. That group effort to plot our next steps going forward, because it's always, again, what's next, what next, using what's happened historically to be able to be your guide, to be able to make sure that you know how to move forward to where you want to go to. So we went through that period, and then we went through a really tough period in 2019. So we won the World Series in 2017, won the World Series in 2018, and then the next year we made a bit of a mistake in terms of, in my opinion, in terms of our contracting, where we didn't, we knew that our senior players' performance was going to go down. We had young players that came in, and we knew their performance would go up. And we predicted at that point over there, we'd still be top 3 in the World Series. But we could never predict that our senior players' performance went down too quickly. So it actually made it low. And our youngsters didn't develop as quickly as what we were expecting, because we were now accommodating our senior players where we could see, sure, but we can't push them as hard. We can't drive them. We can't work them as hard. So the youngsters were suffering, because where they were meant to go on a trajectory moving up, they stayed longer. They didn't get up. And we finished that specific season 4th, which was a huge knock to us. It was really, really tough for us. And then again, we pivoted out, and then we went into COVID. and we had to navigate that whole
Yeah.
experience. And then the last 2 years has been really tough. So we lost Neil Powell after COVID. He went to take up the role at the Sharks, and then then we had a totally new coaching staff, and it was a tough time because we had almost like a mix of an aging squad and inexperienced youngsters. And on the World Series, you'll get exposed if you're not on top of your game,
Yeah.
because one mistake, two mistakes, it's game over, and you lose that crucial game in knockout phases, and then you nowhere. But the cool thing about it was having the right people around you that you can talk about it, be honest about it, be authentic about it, and then also making sure that while we're doing that, that the young people that we're coaching, the young players that are coming into a really tough environment, because up until that stage, youngsters were coming in and they were just winning. They were being successful. They were consistently playing in
Yeah.
semifinals. So it also was almost expected that was going to be their pathway. And now you had youngsters coming in and it was a struggle. It was tough. We were
Yeah.
doing all the hard work, putting in all the effort, but we weren't getting the results. So what was cool about the experience was that we were a group of people together navigating, these stormy seas and working it out as we go along. And last year when the final shuffle happened with our coaching staff and Coach Philip Snyman came into his position, also a legend of the game. He was our captain when we won those two back to back.
I'm going to get him on the show because he is an absolute legend.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
He's an incredible man. He was so frustrated because we knew, okay, this is the direction we're going in. This is what we have to do, and we were sticking to it. We were sticking to our guns. And then since he came in, where we were missing quarterfinals, we were making quarterfinals, but then we were losing in the quarterfinals. So we were topping our pool, but then we just couldn't overcome that hurdle. And I kept on saying to him, and I think this is the key thing to your initial question, was that we have to be really focused on celebrating those small victories, because I likened it to a big ship and a rubber duck. A ship, when you turn it full, you turn the wheel and you go full throttle, it still takes a long time before it reaches where you want to go.
Yeah.
With a rubber duck, you just turn it and it can move around like this. And I said to him, Finny, you need to remember that we've initiated changes, we've changed the way we're doing things, but while we're doing that, we can see the results, even though it's not necessarily transferring into our performances and the net results on the World Series. But if we can just keep on working on that and highlighting that amongst our players, because they need to see that. So they're not allowed to see our frustration that we're not getting the results quickly enough.
Yeah.
That they see that we see the small little victories, topping our pool, in pool play,
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Start seeing that. And then, when we obviously had the toughest week of my life in terms of sport and of coaching and managing a team, was the repechage tournament in Monaco. So basically, winner takes all, 12 teams, and the winner of that tournament is the last team to go to the Olympics. And there's literally 22 days from that final whistle to when you enter the village. You're like, it was chaos. So you got all this. I've got this pressure about what's happening in the future if we do, but we first got to get past that. And then, like I said, Great Britain has always been one of our bogey teams that really, I don't want to say has our number, but they've just got a game that can beat us.
Yeah.
And obviously winning that and the relief that came from that was just incredible. Because can you imagine having a Springbok Sevens team that doesn't even qualify to go to the Olympics? It's just unheard of. And as soon as that happened,
I'm surprised you're not grey. I know you've lost a bit of hair, but
I'm bald. All the hair's gone. And then pivoting from that, I say, okay, well, now we got the Olympics. So what's next? But then getting into the team's mindset is like, look here, can you see that the stuff that we said we wanted to work on after the Vancouver tournament, those things are starting to come. Look, we won this tournament. Yes, it wasn't the best teams in the world, but let's celebrate this victory. We got into that final when it counted, and we were able to make sure we knock off that victory. And what was interesting on that specific tournament, that whole week we spoke about playing for each other, and that's one of those cliches that everyone throws around. But I always say, if you don't know what the cliche looks like, so what is the evidence of playing for each other is, then it's just words. It's the same as companies that have values and missions, etc., etc. If you don't say in practice, that's what it actually looks like, then it's just hollow words, in my opinion. But what it looked like for us in that week is we wanted to score as many tries in the corners as possible. Because what we said to each other was that means that we weren't looking to try and score ourselves. We were looking to give the ball to a person in a better position, which means you got the ball to the sidelines and the tries were scored.
That's excellent. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the kind of talk that we had amongst ourselves is, okay, what is playing for each other? We're in this together. There's 12 of us, not 13. There's 12 of us here. The whole of South Africa's eyes are on us. The world's eyes were actually on us because like they would be pretty happy if we went to the Olympics because it's one threat out of out of the competition. But we said that's what we're looking at. We want to score as many tries in the corner as possible. And if you actually go look at that tournament, it was only a clean break or a bounce ball we ran through, especially in that final, where we actually scored on the post. So all the other ones on the other side. What was also interesting is that Tristan Lades, we were really battling with our conversions, and in sevens, that's a big part of your success. And he on his own took it upon himself to make sure that he was up to a world standard of conversions. And if you go look at that tournament, his conversion rate was extremely
phenomenal.
high. Yeah, and it was just everyone again playing for each other. So he knows, that 2 extra points, what that does for the rest of the team, in terms of, having a look at the scoreboard and recognizing, okay, we're pulling away, and then the pressure that it then puts on the opposition. He knew that was his responsibility. And then what happened was 22 days later, we got to get back into camp. Now we got to plan. We couldn't plan anything. So we know in the Western Cape in winter, you can't train yet, because the fields are waterlogged. It's all muddy. The chances you're going to pick up injuries is high just because you're working so much harder, calf injuries. So you can't train at intensity as what you would in terms of dry fields in Paris. So we had short notice, literally flew up to Johannesburg, trained there for three days, came back. I think we had 4 days of training before we then departed to the Olympics.
I seem to remember that. Was that where you went to Wanderers? Were you training at Wanderers? Yeah.
We were training at
Wits or Wanderers, one of the two.
It was very close. So it was near to Sandton. It was one of the schools near Sandton.
St. David's or whatever.
Where we were. That's where we were. Yeah.
Okay.
So we literally we trained for 2 days at home, and we looked at the weather. And we knew we're not going to be trained next week. The whole week was wet. So we said, okay, we're going to do off-field stuff. We're going to do prehab, rehab, conditioning. We flew up on the Wednesday morning early. Trained Wednesday, trained Thursday, trained Friday morning, flew back. And then the next Tuesday, we flew out to Paris. Wow. And that was our preparation for the Olympics. But like I said, when we started this turnaround process in March, we were putting in place the building blocks, the foundations required to be able to be successful at the Olympics. So that wasn't our end goal, but we knew if we build foundation on foundation on foundation, make sure that's strong and solid, even if we sit in a situation we only have 1 week of training and then fly over to Olympics and go play, we knew that it would have been enough. And I think that's where preparation and plays such a huge role in confidence, because the guys know that they've done what they've done.
Yeah.
And then we went over, and then it was crazy. If you have a look again at that Olympics, we lost our first 2 matches. So again, just like in Madrid before the Monaco tournament, we played against New Zealand and we played against Ireland. And both of those games, we lost by 2 points. The New Zealand game, they played the perfect game. They played the perfect match. Their passes stuck, their offload stuck. They were fantastic, yet they still only beat us by 2 points. So after that, even though we were bottom of the log with Japan in our pool, we knew that we were doing the right stuff. We just got to be patient. And I think that's the key thing. When you plan a season or plan a journey, is recognizing that you might not get the results. You're probably not going to get the results. You aren't going to get the results immediately.
Yeah.
But if you know you're on the right track, if you're 100% certain you're on the right track and you stick with it, then you're giving yourself a chance. So then we had to play against Japan, and we had to beat them by 21 points. So the points difference had to be 21. And I knew we were going to get that. So that was never in doubt, not because of any disrespect towards Japan, but I knew if we do what we're meant to be doing, then that next result will come. And obviously we got into that quarterfinal against New Zealand. And if you have a look at that game, it was probably their most imperfect game that they got. And the pressure that we applied on them just forced errors and forced errors and forced errors. And if you have a look at our weekend, our tournament this past weekend, our final against France, if you look at how many runs, how many forward passes, how many unforced errors they made, again, it was because of the pressure that was applied on them. So one of our principles is to apply pressure, because if we apply pressure points, we're going to either get a turnover and be able to play from that, or we're going to get a first phase. And we know if we keep the ball more than 4 times with the backs that we have and the players that we have, we'll be able to score and be successful. And that's what happened there. And I think testament to the South African character was that defense on our try line, probably for about 2-3 minutes. I don't know if you remember, it was on the left-hand side of the screen while we were playing. And, you know, people after that match, every single team pretty much came to us and just said that, you know, that was probably the most perfect execution of defense and against a world-class team that they'd ever seen. But I think, you know, that was just a culmination of preparation, but then just heart. You know, a South African, you know, we're a different animal.
I love how you've answered that one question that I've asked you in our 30 minutes, by the way, that we have to talk. But
sorry.
I mean, no, it's so awesome. I wish we had answered like that when we were at college together, giving proper. We would have done a lot better. Anyway, but like the culture that you're breeding, I mean, that's massive, isn't it? So if you have someone that doesn't fit in, do you hoof them? How does it work?
Well, you don't really hoof them; they just work themselves out. That's been our experience. So the culture, you know, and remember, for me, the definition of culture is the environment that the team exists in and functions in. So that to me is culture. I've pivoted in how I look at it. I talk about values, I talk about standards, and if you live those, that's what creates your culture, because that's how we behave inside this bubble that we're functioning in. And what has happened is that the players, it becomes so part of how we do things that if you can't buy into it, if you can't submit under it and function with it, then you'll almost excuse yourself from the environment and leave. It wouldn't be a question of us pushing you out, because if you got to push people out, then your culture is not strong enough. The environment, the people within the environment don't believe in what you've agreed upon enough to continue behaving that way, and they going in this way here, but this one person might be moving out here. If they not keep on going and he doesn't decide to join, or she doesn't decide to join, then they'll just move off. So it's not a question of booting them out. I think it's of that environment being so strong that either you want to be part of it or if you don't. And if you don't, then that's fine. You know, you're welcome, and we won't judge you for it. But you're just not for us.
No one's bigger than the team. Put it that way.
Well, unless you want to be successful, that has to be the mantra. You can't do it anywhere else. That's the only way to build teams, is to make sure that everyone understands equal value, different responsibilities, different tasks, different contributions, but everyone's contribution at every level is equal. Because if it doesn't happen, then you can't move forward. And I think that's the kind of mindset that we try and get, is that no one's role or responsibility is less important than anyone else. Philip Snyman, again, he'll tell you that if you get him on the podcast, is you know, he knew in those times when we won those 2 World Series, we had Branko du Preez, we had Cecil Africa, we had Ruan Null, we had Siabelo Senetla. All that they had to do was get the ball, keep the ball, and then they would turn around and walk back to the halfway line, because they knew the backs would go and score and finish it up. And like he said, his hand was always, we spoke about it this past weekend. His hand was on the head and he would just walk back. So he did what he had to do. He didn't get the shine. He wasn't this, he wasn't that. They got all that. But he just walked back with his hands on his head, tired, and things went on. And I think that's one of the things that's important, is in terms of egos, because, you know, if you're worried about who's going to get the shine, if you're worried about who's going to get the attention, who's going to get all the fame and everything like that, then you're almost shooting yourself in the foot, because you're not recognizing your inherent value, your inherent contribution. However, one of the things that I always say is that I want to get to a point where every single try scorer, after they score the try, they do not celebrate at all, that they literally run to the person that gave them the last pass and they celebrate with him, or they run to the person immediately that got the turnover, or they run to the line out jumper that got the ball at the line out. Because what happens then is is that we recognize everyone's contribution to it. And it's just a shift in mindset to value and recognize those people that actually contribute. And if you
Yeah.
can work those, like I always say, what does it look like? What does it look like? Playing for each other. What did it look like that weekend? Scoring tries in the corner. So what does equal value, different roles, different responsibilities, different requirements, equal value? What does that look like? Person scores a try, sprints over, they celebrate together. So it's not just the person who's literally just putting the ball down. I mean, obviously, if he did something great, that's a different story. Then they'll run to him. But just having that awareness of, everyone's contribution to the success of what the team wants to achieve.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Now, you as a mentor, and I mean, I know, I mean, I've jotted down and I understand from what you've been saying here, the couple notes I've written down listening to you talk. I mean, you're very passionate. That's obvious. Okay. You've got this perseverance, like you've gone through the mud and you've climbed the mountains and you've enjoyed the good stuff or whatever the tough times you've had also. But you're a man of faith. So you as a mentor within these environments, how how do you see your role there? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I quite like to know how, as older guys, mentors make a difference out there. And that's important. That's an important part of this whole podcast, making a difference.
100%. I think we've got to start at the beginning, to understand the journey that I've been on personally. So, in a nutshell, my parents got divorced when I was 2 years old. My dad left. The first time I met him in person was when I was 11. Um, I've probably spoken to him 5, 6 times in my life. But I've had an amazing upbringing. I have had incredible father figures in my life, from my grandfather to my uncle to Uncle Rodney Thompson, who used to cart and carry me, from Warner Beach on the south coast up to Pietermaritzburg. Even when he wasn't fetching his own sons, he would come and fetch me, even if it was just for a Sunday, and
Wow.
drop me off at church and spend time with my mom. And then the only proviso was that my mom and Auntie Pam had to travel with him when they dropped us off on a Sunday evening and stuff like that. And I've always been really blessed to have those kind of father figures in my life. A guy by the name of Spier van Rensburg. He was my mentor, coaching wise at Tix, and then later on at the Bulls. When Willem Boshoff, who helped me, and introduced me to so many rugby legends, that helped also carve my way. So I know what it's like growing up, without a father. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have in South Africa is fatherless homes. And I'm pretty certain he won't mind me talking about it. But there's a legend of the game down here in the Boland region. His name was Clement Lewis, and he came up to the Bulls in 2003. And we would sit, in that academy group. We had Piers Spies, Willem Arno, Mornay Steyn, Derek Keane, Clement Lewis, Dylan Des Fountain, Cliff Milton. The guys that really went really far, in rugby. And we would chat at night about his frustration walking through Wellington, or Paul, sorry, and seeing his dad walk on the other side of the road, and not even having a relationship with him. And that's when I realized that I've been blessed with skills and ability that actually links with my purpose. And my purpose is to use my credibility, to use my skill set, to use my experience, to use my success to be able to come into contact with young people, or with people, so that we can have those kind of chats and those discussions, and I can share my story, and almost try and help them find hope in whatever situation they can. Now, obviously, it's always based on my faith in Jesus Christ, and that ability. But I talk about the disciple model. And when you look at Jesus, when he came to earth, he had 12 disciples, and each one of those disciples went out everywhere and they got more disciples. And those disciples got more to a point where, 1.3 or however many billion Christians are on the earth. And it started with 12. It started with Jesus and it started with his 12 disciples. So in my mind, any opportunity that I can get to be able to impart any form of encouragement, any form of hope, any form of help, any form of mentorship, is an opportunity for me to live out my purpose on what I was created to do. And I think that's what's important for each one of us. You talk about mentors. Every single person, there's not one person that has been created that is on this earth that does not have something that's unique to them, some unique skill set that God has blessed them with, which he wants them to use in the environments that they find themselves in. They've just got to recognize it and understand that it's an opportunity to be able to make a difference in people's lives. So that has always been my mindset. I only truly understand it now. I always knew it, but I could never like pinpoint what was my purpose. And I think that's my challenge to everyone is go and think about what's your purpose. Go and think about what is that thing that makes you so unique.
Don't you think the purpose will come to them eventually? They mustn't go searching. It'll come to them if they open their hearts.
Exactly. But you got to think about it.
Yeah.
Because that's when I say searching, I'm saying think about it. In the Bible, it talks about search my heart. So when I search my heart, because very often we're blind to the talents that we have.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think that's it. It's that awareness. It's that awakening. It's that Holy Spirit revival in your spirit, in your soul that says, but Ash, that's what you were created to. You had to go through what you went through because you've got a story to tell. No one can tell you what it's like not to grow up with a dad. No one can tell you what it's like to not have everything that everyone else has. To all those kind of things that I missed out on. No one can tell me that it's not the truth because I lived it. It's real. But when I chat to someone that's maybe going through the same thing, there's a bond. I always talk about a spiritual connection. Your hearts connect, and so often when you're speaking to someone, you can just feel there's something connecting you. And again, when that happens, then you got to embrace it. I mean, that's another thing that I always say to my kids and to most people is that if something sits on your heart, do something about it immediately. Because that's the Holy Spirit's prompting. It's a prompting. If you think of someone that you need to give a call or send a text message or to just send a word of encouragement, there's a reason why you're feeling it right there.
Even if it makes a small difference, it can do so much.
Exactly. And even if it doesn't make a difference for that person right at that moment, God is telling you, now's the time. You're planting that seed. That seed will germinate and sprout when it needs to. But don't ever hold back because then you're not fulfilling your mandate to impart and be there for other people, I think.
Yeah, Ash, that is awesome, Albert. And we've got to wrap this up because we are out of time. But this has been the most first. We have to maybe do this again because it's really inspiring. And I know that a lot of the audience will love what you say. And you're just a normal oak. This is what's so fantastic. You're just such a decent oak. And I just want to really thank you for your time on your leave. Thank Michelle too, by the way, for letting you be here because it's her time. So I really appreciate you sharing a little bit of time with us. And my friend, onwards and upwards, eh? Onwards and upwards. And thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Well, thanks,
and we look forward to another great guest next week. His first name is Reese. And I'll give you a clue. He did play for Wales at prop. Ah, do you know who that is, young man?
No.
You'll have to watch next week.
I'll be there next week. I'll be there next week.
Awesome. Ash, thanks so much. Keep well. And we'll chat soon. Awesome. Thank you.